Welcome, sleepy listeners, to another cozy journey into the world of myth. Tonight, as the stars begin to twinkle, we'll travel to ancient lands to hear a tale of a king and a mysterious wanderer. Our story, Odin and Geirrodr, reminds us that true wisdom often hides in unexpected places, and a kind heart is a powerful thing. Settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. But just before we begin, if our stories help you drift off, please tap the like and subscribe buttons. In my channel, you can find Norse, Greek, and Egyptian mythology tales. Comment and tell me which myth you'd like to hear next. Your support helps us craft and shape more calm stories for fellow night owls. And now let your shoulders sink softly into the mattress and your mind drift into today's tale. From Geirrodr, his high seat, Odin gazed. Valhalla's golden halls stretched below him. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, pierced the veil of worlds. He saw Asgard, bright and bustling, its rainbow bridge, Bifrost, shimmered. Then his sight drifted further, beyond the familiar, to Midgard. Midgard lay spread out like a tapestry. Forests, deep and ancient, covered its lands. Rivers, wide and winding, threaded through valleys. Mountains, snow-capped and silent, touched the clouds. Humanity, in its endless variety, moved across this vibrant stage. Odin watched the comings and goings. He saw farmers tending their fields. He saw warriors honing their blades. He saw children playing by the hearth. He saw the daily rhythms of life unfold. This was his realm. In a way, he had breathed life into it. Yet a subtle disquiet stirred within him. A shadow, faint at first, seemed to lengthen. It stretched across the northern reaches of Midgard. This shadow emanated from a specific place. It came from the kingdom of King Geirrodr. Geirrodr's domain was once prosperous. It had been known for its hospitality. Travelers were welcomed there. Strangers found warmth and shelter. Now, whispers told a different tale. The whispers reached even Valhalla. They spoke of a king grown cold. Geirrodr, they said, had changed. His heart had hardened. His hands, once open, were now clenched. He hoarded his wealth, the whispers claimed. His granaries overflowed. His coffers bulged with gold. Yet, his people sometimes hungered. His generosity had withered. Hospitality, a sacred virtue, had faltered. Strangers were met with suspicion. Doors remained barred. Hearth fires offered no comfort. This was deeply troubling to Odin. He remembered the old ways. He recalled the ancient laws. Guest right was paramount. It was a bond between host and wanderer. To violate it was to invite ruin. Odin's sight honed in on Geirrodr's citadel. It was a formidable fortress. Its walls rose high and thick. Its towers pierced the sky, but its grandeur seemed hollow. He saw Geirrodr himself. The king sat upon his throne. His face was stern, his brow furrowed. His eyes held a glint of suspicion. He seemed burdened by his own power. A deep sigh escaped Odin. It was not a sigh of weariness. It was a sigh of concern. This imbalance, this growing chill, could not be ignored. It threatened the very fabric of Midgard. Then a faint, ethereal hum reached him. It was a vibration in the cosmic weave. A prophecy, old and half forgotten, stirred. It spoke of a time of testing. It spoke of a king's true nature revealed. It hinted at a disruption of harmony. It warned of consequences. If hospitality died, so too might the spirit of Midgard. Odin knew he must act. He could not merely observe. He had to descend. He had to see for himself. He had to test this king. A direct intervention was needed, but not as the Allfather, not in his full, glorious might. No, he needed a disguise. He needed to be humble. He needed to be unassuming. He needed to be a stranger. Only then would Geirrodr's true character emerge. Odin considered his many guises. He had walked Midgard in countless forms. He had been a farmer, a warrior, a poet. He had been a beggar, a sage, a trickster. Now, he needed a simple persona. He chose the name Grimnir. It meant the masked one or the hooded one. It suited his purpose perfectly. It spoke of anonymity. It hinted at hidden depths. His attire would be plain. A long, gray cloak, travel-worn and unassuming. It would conceal his divine form. It would blend him into the landscape. It would make him seem like any weary traveler. A broad-brimmed hat would shade his face. It would obscure his one eye. It would lend an air of mystery. It would prevent immediate recognition. It would help him disappear into the crowd. He would carry a simple staff. It would be made of sturdy wood. It would provide support for his journey. It would be a symbol of a wanderer. It would complete his humble disguise. This journey would be long. It would be arduous. It would require patience. But Odin was patient. He understood the slow turning of the ages. He understood the subtle workings of fate. Before he left, he turned to his faithful companions. Hugin, thought, and Munin, memory, perched on his shoulders. They were his eyes and ears in the world. They brought him news from every corner. My ravens, he spoke, his voice low and resonant. I must leave you for a time. His words were a gentle murmur. They carried the weight of his decision. The ravens cocked their heads. Their dark eyes were intelligent. You will remain here, he continued, in Asgard. Watch over my halls. Observe the realms. Bring me tidings upon my return. He stroked their glossy feathers. Their presence was a comfort. Hugin ruffled his feathers. Munin gave a soft caw. They understood their duty. They were loyal beyond measure. They would await his return patiently. Odin looked at them, then at the vastness of the cosmos. He thought of the importance of hospitality. It was more than just a custom. It was a cornerstone of society. It fostered trust. It built communities. It offered succor to the weary. It was a bridge between strangers. It was a reflection of a generous heart. A world without hospitality was a cold world. It was a world of suspicion and fear. It was a world where kindness withered. It was a world Odin could not tolerate. He knew Geirrodr's reputation. He knew the whispers. But he needed proof. He needed to witness it himself. He needed to experience it firsthand. The journey would be a test, not just for Geirrodr, but for Midgard itself. Would the old virtues endure? Would kindness prevail? Or would greed consume all? Odin stood from Eichlidskjalf. His form began to shift. The golden armor faded. The majestic cloak dissolved. His divine aura dimmed. His broad shoulders seemed to narrow. His tall stature lessened. His features, once sharp and commanding, softened. His single, piercing eye grew less intense. The transformation was gradual. It was a slow unfolding. It was a shedding of power. It was an embrace of humility. He became Grimnir. The gray cloak appeared around him. It was rough-spun, practical. The broad-brimmed hat settled on his head. It cast a shadow over his face. The gnarled staff materialized in his hand. It felt solid, grounding. He was no longer the Allfather. He was no longer the king of Asgard. He was a wanderer. He was a pilgrim. He was a simple traveler. He walked towards the edge of Valhalla. The golden light seemed to recede behind him. The sounds of feasting and merriment faded. He stepped onto the path to Bifrost. The rainbow bridge shimmered. Its colors pulsed with energy. It was a gateway between worlds. It was his passage to Midgard. He walked deliberately, unhurriedly. Each step was a commitment. Each stride was a choice. He was leaving his power behind. He was embracing vulnerability. He was trusting in his disguise. The air grew cooler as he descended. The celestial light dimmed. The earthly smells began to rise. The scent of pine, of damp earth, of wood smoke. These were the smells of Midgard. He felt the ground beneath his worn boots. It was solid, real. It was the same earth he had helped to shape. It was the same world he now sought to heal. The journey would be long. He would walk for many days. He would cross rivers and plains. He would traverse forests and hills. He would meet many people. He would observe their lives. He would listen to their stories. He would gauge the pulse of Midgard. He would understand its heart. He would learn its truths. His purpose was clear. He would reach Geirrodr's kingdom. He would present himself as a stranger. He would ask for shelter. He would test the king's hospitality. The outcome remained uncertain. But Odin was prepared. He was ready for whatever lay ahead. He was ready to face the truth. He was ready to learn the king's true nature. The wind whispered around him. It carried the scent of distant fields. It carried the echoes of humanity. It carried the promise of the unknown. Grimnir walked on. His figure grew smaller. He became one with the landscape. He became a part of Midgard. His journey had truly begun. The sun began to set. Long shadows stretched across the land. The sky turned to hues of orange and purple. first stars began to twinkle. Night would soon fall, and with it, the quiet stillness. The world would rest, but Grimnir would continue his journey. His purpose drove him forward. He thought of Geirrodr. He thought of the coldness. He thought of the closed doors. He wondered if anything could change. He wondered if kindness could be rekindled. He carried a glimmer of hope. He carried the wisdom of ages. He carried the weight of his concern. He carried the spirit of the Allfather. But for now, he was just Grimnir, a humble wanderer, a stranger in a strange land, seeking shelter, seeking truth, seeking the heart of Midgard. His footsteps were soft. They left no trace. He was a shadow among shadows. He was a whisper in the wind. He was Odin disguised. The world slept around him. But his journey had just awakened. It was a journey of discovery. It was a journey of purpose. It was a story unfolding. He walked under the watchful eyes of the stars. They seemed to guide him. They seemed to illuminate his path. They seemed to whisper encouragement. The air grew crisp. A chill settled over the land. He pulled his gray cloak tighter. It offered little warmth, but his resolve kept him going. He knew the road ahead was difficult. He knew the task was great, but he was Odin, and he would see it through. For the sake of Midgard, for the sake of balance, for the sake of hospitality. The faint glow of a distant hearth fire caught his eye. It was a tiny beacon in the vast darkness. It was a reminder of what he sought. It was a symbol of warmth and welcome. He continued toward it. His pace was steady, his purpose unwavering. The story had begun. The test was at hand, and Grimnir was ready. The path narrowed. It wound through ancient, gnarled trees. Their branches, like skeletal fingers, reached toward a pale, rising moon. Grimnir walked steadily. His cloak rustled softly in the cool evening air. He had journeyed far that day. He walked for many hours more. The distant glow, a beacon in the deepening twilight, grew brighter. It promised warmth. It promised respite. This was Geirrodr's hall, he knew. Finally, the trees thinned. Before him, a sight of stark grandeur unfolded. Geirrodr's hall stood imposing, carved from dark, formidable stone. Its massive timbers gleamed faintly, polished by countless hands. Great oak doors, bound with bands of iron, dominated the entrance. They seemed to frown upon the world. Torches, set in iron sconces, flickered along the hall's formidable walls. Their light cast long, dancing shadows. Grimnir approached cautiously. He observed the hall's architecture. It was a fortress, certainly a place of power. Yet, it lacked something, a certain welcoming glow. No smoke curled lazily from its chimneys. No boisterous laughter spilled from its windows. A peculiar quiet hung heavy in the air. It was a silence that spoke of vigilance, perhaps of fear. He stepped onto a wide, flagstone courtyard. His boots made a soft, rhythmic sound. The air here was still. It carried the faint scent of wood smoke and damp earth. No guards were visible. Still, Grimnir felt eyes upon him. He knew they were there, hidden in the shadows. He remained calm. He showed no surprise. He simply stood, a weary traveler seeking shelter. After a moment, a small, heavy door creaked open. It was set within the larger main entrance. A figure emerged, tall and gaunt. He was clad in dark, practical clothing. This was a servant, Grimnir surmised, or perhaps a guard. The man's face was etched with suspicion. His eyes, dark and piercing, swept over Grimnir. They lingered on his simple attire. "Who are you?" The man's voice was gruff. It held no warmth. "And what is your purpose here?" He held a spear loosely in one hand. It was a gesture of readiness. Grimnir met his gaze. "I am a traveler," he replied, his voice low and steady. "My name is Grimnir. I seek shelter for the night, and perhaps a morsel of food." He spoke with humble sincerity. The man's eyes narrowed further. He seemed to weigh Grimnir's words. "Geirrodr's hall does not entertain beggars," he stated flatly. His tone was dismissive. "I am no beggar," Grimnir corrected gently. "Only a weary traveler. The night is cold. I offer what little I have for hospitality." He gestured to his simple pouch. The guard hesitated. He glanced back into the dimly lit interior of the hall. A moment passed in silence. Then another figure appeared beside him. This new man was older, his face severe. He wore finer clothes, though equally dark. He carried himself with an air of authority. This was surely a steward. "What is the delay, Atrolf?" the older man demanded. His voice was sharp, impatient. He looked at Grimnir with thinly veiled disdain. Atrolf quickly explained. "A traveler, sir. He seeks lodging." He gestured vaguely toward Grimnir. The steward's gaze was colder than Atrolf's. "Another wanderer," he scoffed. "They come like moths to a flame. What is your trade, stranger?" His eyes probed Grimnir's very soul. "I am a wanderer," Grimnir repeated. "I have no trade save for walking. I have seen much of the world. I offer stories, perhaps, for a warm corner." He offered a small, disarming smile. The steward's lips thinned. "Stories do not fill stomachs here," he retorted. "Nor do they pay for lodging. Our larders are not open to every vagrant." He seemed poised to dismiss Grimnir. But then a new voice echoed from within the hall. It was deep, commanding. "What is this commotion, Agnar?" The voice carried a distinct edge of impatience. Agnar, the steward, stiffened. He bowed slightly toward the unseen speaker. "Only a persistent traveler, my lord," he called back. "He seeks shelter." A figure emerged fully into the doorway. This was Geirrodr. He was a man of imposing stature, broad-shouldered and stern-faced. His eyes, like chips of flint, surveyed Grimnir. Geirrodr's hair was dark, streaked with silver. His beard was neatly trimmed. He wore a tunic of rich, dark wool, belted with a heavy silver buckle. He exuded power, but also a palpable tension. "Let him enter," Geirrodr commanded, his voice resonating with authority. "But keep a close watch. We harbor no spies here." His gaze remained fixed on Grimnir. Agnar bowed again. "As you wish, my lord." He then gestured curtly to Grimnir. "Enter, stranger. But know that every guest in Geirrodr's hall is watched." His tone was a clear warning. Grimnir bowed his head slightly. "I thank you for your hospitality, noble lord," he said to Geirrodr. His voice was calm, respectful. He stepped over the threshold. The interior of the hall was vast. It was dimly lit by a central hearth and a few scattered braziers. The air was thick with the faint smell of old wood smoke and something else, a lingering scent of damp stone. The hall was grand, certainly. Its ceiling soared high above, supported by massive timber beams. Intricate carvings adorned the wooden pillars. They depicted scenes of battle and hunting. But like the exterior, the hall lacked warmth. The stone walls seemed to absorb the light. The furniture, heavy and ornate, was arranged with rigid precision. There was no comfortable clutter here. A few figures sat at long tables. They were scattered sparsely throughout the vast space. They ate in near silence. Their movements were stiff, their faces unsmiling. Grimnir observed them. Their eyes, like Agnar's, were wary. They rarely met each other's gaze. A strange, palpable tension permeated the very air. He noticed the absence of children's laughter. There were no women weaving by the fire. No dogs dozed peacefully on the rushes. It was a hall devoid of the usual sounds of home. Agnar led Grimnir toward the central hearth. A large, roaring fire blazed there. Its light cast flickering shadows on the faces of those nearest. It was the only source of true warmth. "You may sit here," Agnar said, indicating a small, unoccupied space near the fire. "Do not stray. Do not speak unless spoken to." His tone was a stern command. Grimnir nodded. He settled himself on the rushes. The warmth of the fire was a welcome balm. He stretched his hands toward the flames. He felt the eyes upon him. He knew they were watching his every move. He kept his gaze on the fire, feigning indifference. But his senses were keenly alert. He noticed two men seated nearby. One was Agnar, who remained close, his gaze unwavering. The other was a man with a cruel, mocking smile. His eyes glittered with malice. This man was Geirrodr, Geirrodr's jester. But his humor was sharp, it cut like a knife. His laughter, when it came, was a brittle, unsettling sound. He wore motley, but it seemed to mock rather than entertain. Geirrodr watched Grimnir with an unnerving intensity. He whispered something to Agnar. Agnar grunted in response. A cold amusement played on Geirrodr's lips. Grimnir remained still. He observed the dynamics of the court. Fear was a constant companion here. It clung to every face. It was reflected in every strained silence. Geirrodr sat at a raised dais. He was at the far end of the hall. He ate alone. His movements were precise, almost mechanical. He rarely looked up. His presence, however, was immense. It dominated the hall. Every whisper, every glance seemed to be measured against his watchful eye. He was a king, certainly, but a solitary one. A servant approached Grimnir. He carried a wooden trencher. It held a piece of dark bread and a small portion of stew. The food was plain, but nourishing. "Eat," the servant said, his voice flat. He did not offer a smile. He simply placed the trencher before Grimnir. Then he quickly withdrew. Grimnir thanked him quietly. He took the bread. He broke off a piece. He ate slowly, savoring the warmth of the stew. He showed no outward sign of his keen observation. He noted the hushed conversations. They were brief, almost furtive. People spoke in low tones. They constantly glanced toward Geirrodr. The air was heavy with unspoken words. It was filled with suppressed emotions. It was a place of power, yes, but also of profound unease. Grimnir finished his meal. He placed the trencher aside. He folded his hands in his lap. He appeared to be simply resting, weary from his travels, but his mind was active. He was piecing together the atmosphere of this hall. He was understanding the nature of its inhabitants. He was learning about Geirrodr. He felt the weight of Agnar's stare. He heard the occasional, unsettling chuckle from Fjallr. He was a stranger in a strange land. He was an uninvited guest. Yet he felt no fear. He felt only a deep sense of calm. He had faced far greater challenges. He had encountered far more dangerous beings. He knew that his presence here was not accidental. He knew that this journey had a purpose. He knew that the threads of fate were weaving around him. The fire crackled merrily. Its flames danced. They cast a warm, inviting glow. But the warmth did not reach the cold corners of the hall. The night deepened outside. The wind began to sigh around the hall's formidable walls. It whispered secrets through the ancient stones. Grimnir settled himself more comfortably. He closed his eyes for a moment. He breathed deeply. He absorbed the strange energy of Geirrodr's hall. He was Grimnir the Wanderer. He was a guest for now. But he was also Odin the Allfather. And he had come to this hall for a reason. He would wait. He would watch. He would listen. He would learn. The night was long. The truth, he knew, would eventually reveal itself. He heard the soft rustle of rushes. Someone was moving closer. He did not open his eyes immediately. He waited. It was Agnar. He stood over Grimnir. His shadow fell across the firelight. "You sleep quickly, stranger." Agnar's voice was low, suspicious. Grimnir opened his eyes. He met Agnar's gaze calmly. "A weary traveler sleeps where he can," he replied. His voice was soft. Agnar grunted. He seemed dissatisfied with the answer. He remained standing there for a moment longer. Then he moved away. Grimnir watched him go. He noticed Agnar's stiffness. he saw the tension in his shoulders. Agnar, too, seemed to live in fear. Geirrodr, the jester, watched the exchange. A thin, knowing smile played on his lips. He seemed to find amusement in Agnar's suspicion. Grimnir closed his eyes again. He listened to the quiet sounds of the hall, the occasional clink of a spoon, the soft shuffling of feet, the distant sigh of the wind. He was a silent observer. He was a humble guest, but his mind, like the hall itself, held depths that were not easily seen. The air grew cooler as the night progressed. The fire, though still burning, seemed to lose some of its intensity. The hall grew darker. One by one, the few remaining figures drifted away. They disappeared into the shadows. They sought their own corners of rest. Soon, only Grimnir remained by the fire. Agnar sat at a table nearby. He was still watchful. Geirrodr was there too, seemingly lost in his own dark thoughts. The hall was silent then. Only the crackle of the fire broke the stillness, and the soft, rhythmic breathing of Grimnir. He was a speck of warmth in a cold, uninviting place. He was a beacon of calm in a hall of tension. He was Grimnir, and he waited. The night stretched on. Time seemed to slow. Each moment hung suspended. The fire cast long, dancing shadows on the ancient walls. Grimnir felt the cold seeping into the stones. He felt the weight of the silence. He felt the watchful eyes upon him. He was patient. He was still. He was a part of the hall now. He was a silent presence. He knew that the morning would bring new challenges. He knew that his true purpose would soon unfold. But for now, he rested. He observed. He waited. The fire's glow softened further. The embers pulsed warmly. A deep, quiet peace settled over Grimnir. Despite the hall's coldness, he felt a strange sense of belonging. He was a wanderer, yes, but he was also home. For this hall, despite its unwelcoming nature, was where his journey had led him, and where his story would continue. A messenger, breathless and hurried, burst into the great hall. He bowed low, almost tripping over his own feet. Geirrodr, the king, looked up sharply. His feast had been interrupted, his mood, already sour, curdled further. "Your Majesty," the messenger stammered, "a stranger has arrived." Geirrodr scowled. He detested uninvited guests. His kingdom, though vast, felt small to him. Every new face was a potential threat. A stranger, Geirrodr's voice was a low growl. "What kind of stranger?" He gestured with a heavy hand. His goblet, overflowing with mead, sloshed onto the polished table. "He is old, Your Majesty," the messenger explained, "and cloaked. He speaks little, but his eyes, they hold ancient wisdom." Geirrodr grunted. He valued only his own wisdom. Geirrodr, the king's jester, chuckled. His eyes, though merry, held a glint of malice. "Perhaps he is a sorcerer, Your Majesty, come to steal your very thoughts." Agnar, the king's steward, nodded gravely. He was a man of few words, but his loyalty to Geirrodr was absolute. Geirrodr's paranoia flared. He glanced from Geirrodr to Agnar. Their loyalty was a balm to his troubled mind. He trusted their judgment, perhaps too much. "Bring him to me," Geirrodr commanded. His voice echoed through the hall. "Bring him now." The messenger scrambled away, eager to escape the king's wrath. Geirrodr leaned back in his throne. His fingers drummed a restless rhythm. He had built his kingdom with an iron fist. He would not let some wanderer dismantle it. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The hall grew quiet. Even the musicians had ceased their playing. A heavy anticipation settled over the room. Then the doors creaked open. A figure, cloaked and hooded, stepped inside. He moved with a quiet dignity. His gaze swept over the opulent hall, unblinking. Geirrodr narrowed his eyes. This was no ordinary beggar. This man carried an aura of power. It was a power Geirrodr did not recognize. So Geirrodr began, his voice laced with suspicion. "You are the stranger." The cloaked figure remained silent. He simply stood there, unmoving. "Speak, old man," Geirrodr demanded. "What is your name? Why do you trespass upon my lands?" The stranger's eyes, deep and ancient, met Geirrodr's. "I am Grimnir," the stranger finally said. His voice was calm, yet resonant. It held no fear, no deference. This infuriated Geirrodr. "Grimnir," Geirrodr repeated, tasting the name. A common name for an uncommon man. He sneered. "What is your purpose here, Grimnir? Do you seek refuge, or something more?" Grimnir remained composed. "I seek only a place to rest," he replied. "A brief respite from my journey." His words were simple, yet they carried a profound weight. Geirrodr stepped forward, his gestures cap askew. "A journey, you say? Perhaps a journey of conquest," he chuckled, a high-pitched, unsettling sound. "Perhaps he is an enemy in disguise." Agnar, ever watchful, added, "His eyes, your majesty. They hold secrets." Geirrodr considered their words. His paranoia swelled, eclipsing his reason. "Secrets, you say?" Geirrodr's voice was cold. "Then you shall reveal them." He rose from his throne. His shadow loomed large over the hall. "I have no secrets," Grimnir stated. His voice remained steady, unwavering. This calm defiance only fueled Geirrodr's anger. "Every man has secrets," Geirrodr snarled. "And every man can be broken." He gestured to his guards. "Seize him." The guards, burly and grim, moved forward. They surrounded Grimnir, their spears glinting. Grimnir did not flinch. He simply stood, a silent sentinel. "Bind him," Geirrodr commanded. "Bind him tightly," the guards obeyed. Rope was produced, thick and rough. They secured Grimnir's wrists, then his ankles. "Where shall we take him, your majesty?" a guard asked. His voice was hushed. Even the guards felt the strange tension in the air. Geirrodr paced before his throne. His mind raced, seeking a suitable torment. He wanted to break this man. He wanted to expose his true nature. Bring him to the great hall center, Geirrodr decided. His eyes gleamed with a cruel satisfaction. And build 2 fires. Geirrodr clapped his hands with glee. 2 fires, your majesty. A truly inspired torture. Agnar nodded in agreement. They reveled in Geirrodr's cruelty. Grimnir watched them, his expression unreadable. He offered no resistance, no plea. His silence was a powerful challenge. The guards dragged Grimnir to the center of the hall. He moved with a strange grace, even in chains. His gaze remained fixed, unflinching. Servants scurried, bringing logs and kindling. Soon, 2 roaring fires blazed. Their heat radiated through the hall. The air grew thick with smoke and warmth. Place him between them, Geirrodr ordered. His voice was a harsh whisper, close enough to feel the heat, but not so close as to burn. The guards positioned Grimnir carefully. He stood between the twin infernos. The flames danced, casting flickering shadows on his cloaked form. He will stay there, Geirrodr declared. His voice boomed through the hall. For 8 nights, for 8 long nights, he will endure the flames. A gasp rippled through the hall. 8 nights was an eternity. Few men could withstand such an ordeal. This was a torment designed to break even the strongest will. The heat will loosen his tongue, Geirrodr continued. It will reveal his true identity, his true purpose. He looked at Grimnir, a triumphant glint in his eyes. Grimnir met his gaze. His eyes held no fear, no pain, only a profound, ancient calm. This unnerved Geirrodr. Let the ordeal begin, Geirrodr announced. He settled back onto his throne. A grim satisfaction spread across his face. He believed he held all the power. The first night began. The fires crackled and roared. Their heat enveloped Grimnir. Yet he did not stir. He stood like a statue, silent and still. Geirrodr watched him intently. He expected cries, pleas, confessions. He expected to see Grimnir's spirit crumble. But Grimnir remained unbroken. Geirrodr whispered to Agnar, "He is a stubborn one, but even stone wears away with time." Agnar nodded, his gaze fixed on Grimnir. The hours passed slowly. The hall was emptied of all but the king, his jester, his steward, and Grimnir. The silence was broken only by the crackling fires. Geirrodr grew restless. He had expected a quicker surrender. This man's stoicism was infuriating. It challenged his authority, his very understanding of power. He ordered more wood for the fires. The flames grew higher, hotter. The air shimmered with their intensity. Still, Grimnir stood unyielding. The heat was oppressive. Sweat beaded on Geirrodr's brow. Yet Grimnir seemed unaffected. His cloak, though dark, did not smoke or singe. Geirrodr's frustration mounted. He had anticipated a swift victory. This drawn-out defiance was an affront. It mocked his power. The first night ended. The morning light filtered through the hall's high windows. Grimnir remained standing, exactly as he had been. He showed no signs of distress. Geirrodr rose, his expression grim. "He is a resilient one," he muttered, "but his resolve will break." He believed his will was stronger. He left the hall, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. He had unleashed a torment, but he wondered if he had truly understood his captive. The day passed slowly. Geirrodr was consumed by thoughts of Grimnir. He returned to the hall often, expecting to find him weakened. But Grimnir remained strong. The second night began. The fires were rekindled, their heat renewed. Geirrodr watched, his frustration growing. Grimnir was an enigma. Fjalar tried to amuse the king. He told jokes, sang songs. But Geirrodr's mind was elsewhere. It was fixated on the silent figure between the flames. Agnar brought the king food and drink. Geirrodr ate little. His appetite had vanished. He was obsessed with breaking Grimnir. The heat was relentless. It pressed in, suffocating. Yet Grimnir breathed calmly. His chest rose and fell with a steady rhythm. Geirrodr imagined the pain, the searing discomfort. He wondered how Grimnir endured it. What hidden strength did this old man possess? He ordered the fires to be stoked higher. The guards worked tirelessly. The hall became an oven. The air thrummed with the heat. Still Grimnir stood. His eyes, though ancient, held a quiet power. They seemed to look beyond the flames, beyond the king. The second night ended. Grimnir stood as before, unbroken, unbowed. Geirrodr's face was a mask of fury. "He is a demon," Fjalar whispered. "He feels no pain." Agnar nodded in agreement. Their fear was growing. Geirrodr dismissed their words. He refused to acknowledge any power greater than his own. He would break this man. He would. The third night arrived. The routine was set. Fires blazing. Grimnir standing. Geirrodr watching. His resolve hardened. He commanded the guards to keep vigil. No one was to approach Grimnir. No one was to offer him aid. He would be left to his ordeal. The hall was dark, save for the firelight. Shadows danced on the high walls. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood. Geirrodr sat on his throne, a silent sentinel. He watched Grimnir, his eyes narrowed. He felt a strange mixture of anger and awe. Grimnir was a challenge, a formidable one. Geirrodr had never encountered such defiance. It both enraged and fascinated him. He thought of his own power, his vast kingdom, his loyal subjects, his wealth. All seemed insignificant before Grimnir's quiet strength. The heat was intense. It shimmered in the air. It pressed against the skin. Geirrodr felt his own discomfort. Yet Grimnir stood firm. He wondered about Grimnir's past, his journey. What had shaped this man? What had forged such an unbreakable spirit? He questioned his own judgment. Had he made a mistake? Was this man truly a threat, or merely a weary traveler? No, Geirrodr decided. He could not afford such weakness. His kingdom depended on his strength, his ruthlessness. He would not yield. He would not show mercy. He would continue the torment until Grimnir broke, until his secrets were revealed. The third night slowly faded. The early morning light began to pierce the darkness. Grimnir remained motionless, a dark silhouette against the dying embers. Geirrodr rose from his throne. His sleep had been restless, his mind tormented. He looked at Grimnir, a profound weariness in his eyes. He had started this ordeal. He had unleashed this cruel test. But he felt, for the first time, a tremor of doubt. This was not just a test of Grimnir's endurance. It was a test of Geirrodr's own power. And in the silent hall, surrounded by the lingering heat, Geirrodr wondered who would truly break first. The long hours stretched into an eternity. Grimnir remained bound between the two fires. Smoke stung his eyes. Heat radiated from the burning logs. Still, he did not flinch. His gaze remained steady, fixed on the distant wall. Geirrodr often visited. He would watch Grimnir. A cruel satisfaction hardened his features. He saw no suffering. He saw only stubbornness. He saw a man defying him. The king would pace the hall. He would question his guards. Has he spoken yet? He would demand. Has he confessed his true name? Each time, the answer was no. Each time, Geirrodr would scowl. He would order more wood added to the flames. The hall grew stifling. Even the seasoned warriors shifted uncomfortably. Sweat beaded on their brows. They respected their king. But this torment felt excessive. It felt wrong. Whispers began to circulate. Low, hushed questions. One young boy watched intently. His name was Gunnar. He was Geirrodr's son. His heart ached for the old man. Gunnar was gentle. He was kind. He saw the suffering his father refused to acknowledge. Gunnar was small for his age. His hair was the color of straw. His eyes were wide and blue. They held a deep compassion. He had often seen his father's cruelty. He had seen it directed at servants. He had seen it directed at animals. He had always felt a pang of sorrow. This was different. This old man was helpless. He was a prisoner. Gunnar felt a powerful urge. He wanted to help. He wanted to ease the pain. He knew his father's temper. He knew the risks. Night fell again. The hall grew quiet. Most of the guards slept, or they feigned sleep. Gunnar slipped from his bed. He moved like a shadow. He carried a small wooden cup. It was filled with cool spring water. He approached Grimnir cautiously. The air shimmered with heat. The old man's eyes were open. They watched him approach. There was no fear in them, only a quiet understanding. Gunnar knelt beside him. He extended the cup. His small hand trembled slightly. "Here," he whispered. His voice was barely audible. "For you." Grimnir looked at the water. Then he looked at the boy. A faint smile touched his lips. It was a rare sight, a fleeting moment of warmth. He lifted his head slightly. Gunnar held the cup steady. Grimnir drank deeply. The water was a blessing. It soothed his parched throat. "Thank you, young one," Grimnir murmured. His voice was rough. It was raspy from the smoke, but it held a deep sincerity. Gunnar felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of purpose. He returned the next night, and the night after that. He brought more water. He brought a piece of dried meat. He brought a small, soft cloth. He used it to wipe Grimnir's brow. Are you very hot?" Gunnar asked one evening. His brow was furrowed with concern. Grimnir nodded slowly. "The fire bites," he acknowledged. "But I have endured worse." His gaze seemed to pierce the flames. He looked beyond them. "My father, he is very angry," Gunnar said softly. He fidgeted with the hem of his tunic. "He thinks you are lying." Grimnir chuckled. It was a low, rumbling sound. "Your father sees only what he wishes to see," he replied. "He sees a threat. He sees a challenge. But you are not a threat," Gunnar insisted. "You are just an old man." "Appearances can be deceiving, Gunnar," Grimnir said. His eyes twinkled. "The simplest stone can hide a diamond. The quietest stream can carve a canyon." Gunnar pondered this. He was a thoughtful boy. He liked riddles, even if he didn't always understand them. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Patience, young one," Grimnir advised. "All will be revealed in time." He closed his eyes briefly. He seemed to gather his strength. The fire continued to roar. The smoke continued to swirl. Grimnir endured it all. His body was a testament to resilience. His spirit remained unbroken. He observed the court. He watched the guards. He saw the subtle shifts. Some of Geirrodr's most loyal retainers began to show their unease. Their faces were grim. Their conversations were hushed. They respected the king's authority, but their honor was chafed. This was not a warrior's trial. This was torture. One grizzled veteran named Geirrodr often watched Grimnir. His eyes were troubled. He had served Geirrodr for decades. He had fought bravely beside him, but he had always valued fair play. This was not fair. He saw the boy, Gunnar, tending to the old man. Geirrodr pretended not to notice. He would turn his back. He would clean his sword. He would give Gunnar the space he needed. He admired the boy's courage. He admired his compassion. Grimnir noticed Geirrodr's silent approval. He noticed the slight nods. He noticed the averted gazes. He understood. There were still good men here, even in Geirrodr's court. One morning, the king was particularly agitated. He had received news. A neighboring chieftain was gathering his forces. Geirrodr paced furiously. "This is a bad omen," he shouted. "This stranger has brought ill luck." He stormed over to Grimnir. "Speak, old man," he roared. "Tell me your name. Tell me your purpose, or the fires will burn hotter still." Grimnir met his gaze. His eyes were calm. "My name will not change your fate, Geirrodr," he said. His voice was low. It was steady. "Your choices have already sealed it." Geirrodr's face flushed with anger. He ordered more wood. He ordered the fires stoked higher. The heat became unbearable. Even the guards retreated. They stood at a distance, They wiped their sweating faces. Gunnar watched from the shadows. His heart pounded. He wanted to run to Grimnir. He wanted to douse the flames. He knew he could not. He felt helpless. That night, he crept to Grimnir's side. He brought a damp cloth. He gently wiped the old man's forehead. Grimnir's skin was hot. It was dry. "Are you in pain?" Gunnar asked. His voice trembled. Grimnir smiled faintly. "Pain is a teacher, young Gunnar," he said. "It reveals strength you never knew you possessed." He paused. His gaze became distant. "Listen closely, boy. I will tell you something." Gunnar leaned in. He listened intently. "From the ash of the old," Grimnir began, "new life shall spring. From the silence of the deep, a voice shall sing." "What am I?" Gunnar thought hard. He furrowed his brow. "I don't know," he admitted. "It's a hard riddle." Grimnir chuckled. "It is a riddle of creation, young one. A riddle of renewal." He breathed deeply. "There are 9 worlds, Gunnar. 9 realms connected by the great tree, Yggdrasil. Each holds its own wonders, its own secrets." Gunnar's eyes widened. He had heard tales of the worlds, but they were just stories, fairy tales from his mother, never from a real person. "Tell me more," Gunnar pleaded. His fear for Grimnir was momentarily forgotten. His curiosity was piqued. Grimnir spoke in a low, steady voice. He described Asgard, the home of the Aesir gods. He spoke of Valhalla, the Hall of Heroes. He spoke of Bifrost, the shimmering rainbow bridge. He spoke of Midgard, the world of men. He spoke of Jotunheim, the land of giants. He spoke of Niflheim, the realm of ice and mist. He wove a tapestry of myth, a tapestry of wonder. Gunnar listened spellbound. He was transported. He saw the shimmering halls. He smelled the frost-kissed air. He heard the thunder of hooves. "But why are you here?" Gunnar asked. He brought himself back to the present. He remembered the flames. He remembered the chains. Grimnir's gaze returned to the boy. "I am here for a purpose, Gunnar," he said. His voice was grave. "A purpose that your father, in his blindness, cannot yet comprehend." "Will the fire stop?" Gunnar asked. He looked at the glowing logs. "They will stop when their purpose is served," Grimnir replied. "When the truth is revealed, when the veil is lifted." He shared more riddles. He spoke of the raven, the wolf, the serpent. He spoke of wisdom hidden in plain sight. He spoke of courage found in unexpected places. He spoke of destiny. Gunnar absorbed every word. He felt a connection to this old man, a connection deeper than words. He felt an understanding, a sense of truth. The days blurred into nights. The fire continued its relentless assault. Grimnir's patience was extraordinary. He never complained. He never cried out. He simply endured. He watched. He listened. He taught. Geirrodr's anger festered. He saw Grimnir's calm. He saw his endurance. It only fueled his rage. He interpreted it as defiance, as mockery. He is a sorcerer. Geirrodr bellowed one day. He paced before his throne. He uses dark magic to withstand the flames. His courtiers exchanged uneasy glances. Some murmured agreement. Others remained silent. Their gazes drifted to Grimnir. They saw no magic. They saw only an old man. A very strong old man. Geirrodr, the old warrior, cleared his throat. "My king," he began cautiously. "Perhaps he is simply resilient. Perhaps he is a man of great fortitude." Geirrodr whirled on him. "Are you questioning my judgment, Geirrodr?" he demanded. His voice was cold. "No, my lord," Geirrodr replied, bowing his head. "Only offering an alternative perspective." Geirrodr scoffed. "There is no alternative. He is a spy, a sorcerer. He means us harm." The unease in the court deepened. The air was thick with tension. Loyalty was tested. Honor was strained. Gunnar continued his secret visits. He brought what comfort he could. He listened to Grimnir's stories. He learned about the worlds. He learned about the gods. He learned about himself. "Why do you help me, young Gunnar?" Grimnir asked one evening. His voice was soft. Gunnar looked at him. His blue eyes were sincere. "Because it is wrong," he said simply. "What my father is doing, it is wrong." Grimnir nodded slowly. "A good heart, Gunnar," he said. "A rare and precious thing." He paused. "Remember this, boy. True strength lies not in wielding power, but in showing compassion." He spoke of the threads of fate. He spoke of choices. He spoke of consequences. He spoke of the web of weird, the intricate pattern of destiny. Gunnar listened without fully understanding, but he felt the weight of the words. He felt their importance. He felt a sense of awe. The smoke filled his lungs. The heat seared his skin. Still, Grimnir's mind remained clear. His gaze remained sharp. He saw the flicker of doubt in Geirrodr's eyes. He saw the growing dissent among his men. He saw the purity of Gunnar's heart. His ordeal was not just punishment. It was a test, a revelation, a slow, agonizing unveiling of truth. The truth of Geirrodr's character, the truth of his court, the truth of humanity. He continued to share fragments of ancient wisdom. "The wise man knows his limits," he told Gunnar. "The foolish man believes himself boundless." He spoke of the importance of hospitality, of the sacred bond between host and guest, a bond that Geirrodr had broken, a bond that Gunnar, in his innocent kindness, had unknowingly reaffirmed. Gunnar felt a growing respect for Grimnir, a quiet reverence. This was no ordinary old man. This was someone ancient, someone profound, someone with knowledge beyond his years, beyond his world. The days passed. The fire dwindled. Then it was stoked again. The cycle continued. The heat intensified. The smoke thickened. Grimnir remained steadfast. He was a pillar of endurance, a silent monument to resilience. He waited. He knew his time would come. He knew the truth would emerge. And when it did, It would be undeniable. It would be transformative for Geirrodr, for Gunnar, for the entire court. The old man's patience was not passive. It was active. It was powerful. It was a force that slowly, inexorably reshaped the world around him. The flames still danced high. Their heat pressed close. Grimnir watched Gunnar. The young king showed deep kindness. He brought Grimnir fresh water each day. He offered him food, though Grimnir refused. Gunnar's compassion never wavered. This was a good heart. This was a true soul. Grimnir felt a shift within him. The time had come. He would speak his truth. He would share ancient knowledge. He would reveal his true nature. The fires would not deter him. The heat no longer mattered. Only the words mattered now. He cleared his throat softly. His voice was low. It was a murmur at first. Gunnar leaned closer. He listened intently. The guards shifted uneasily. They could sense a change. A hush fell over the hall. Grimnir began to chant. It was not a song. It was a rhythmic speaking. The words flowed like a river. They carried ancient weight. This was the Grimnismal. It was a poem of power. It held secrets of the cosmos. I am called Grimnir, he began. His voice gained strength. But many names are mine. I am the Allfather. I am the Wanderer. I am the Hanged God. Each name resonated. It echoed in the vast hall. Gunnar's eyes widened. He listened in awe. I am the One-Eyed, Grimnir continued. I am the High One. I am the Lord of Runes. The names layered upon each other. They built a grand tapestry. They spoke of vast experience. They bespoke immense wisdom. The guards seemed mesmerized. Even Geirrodr listened. I journey through the realms, Grimnir chanted. On my steed, Sleipnir, I seek knowledge always. I gather ancient lore. I observe all worlds. His voice was a deep hum. It filled every corner. It settled on every being. He spoke of Yggdrasil. The mighty world tree stands. Its roots reach deep below. Its branches touch the sky. It connects all realms. Gunnar pictured the vast tree. He saw its immense power. He imagined its ancient wisdom. 9 realms it holds, Grimnir explained. Each with its own life. Each with its own magic. Asgard, home of the Aesir. Vanaheim, home of the Vanir. He named them slowly. He painted pictures with words. Midgard is your home, he said. The realm of humankind. Jotunheim, land of giants. Ulfheim, realm of light elves. The words were like a balm. They soothed the oppressive heat. The fires seemed less fierce. Svartalfheim, realm of dark elves. Niflheim, realm of mist. Muspelheim, realm of fire. Hell, realm of the dead. Each name was a whisper, each a glimpse into another world. Gunnar absorbed every sound. He drank in every word. Bifrost is the bridge, Grimnir chanted. The rainbow path to Asgard. It shines with vibrant hues. It connects the worlds. It guards the gods' home. He described its beauty. He spoke of its strength. Valhalla is my hall, he revealed, where fallen heroes gather. They feast and train daily. They await Ragnarök. He spoke of battles past. He spoke of glorious futures. His words were a song of courage. I gather warriors there, he continued. Those chosen for glory. They fight beside me then, when the final battle comes. Gunnar imagined brave souls. He saw them preparing for war. He felt a shiver of destiny. The air grew lighter. The heat began to recede. The flames still burned brightly, but their intensity lessened. A cool breeze seemed to stir. It swept through the great hall. It brought fresh air with it. Grimnir's voice continued. It wove a spell. It painted vivid scenes. He spoke of the sacred well. Mimir's well of wisdom. I gave an eye for its waters. For knowledge, I sacrificed. Gunnar understood his missing eye. It was a price for vast insight. The runes are my gift, Grimnir explained. From the gallows I hung. For 9 nights and days. I sought their true meaning. They hold power and secrets. He described the agony. He conveyed the triumph. I am the god of war, he said, but also of poetry, of wisdom and magic, of death and inspiration. His identity unfolded. It became clear and vast. He was many things at once. The raven Hugin flies, he chanted. Thought he brings to me. Munin memory also. They bring news of the world. They whisper secrets in my ear. Gunnar pictured the wise birds. He saw them circling the earth. My wolves, Jerry and Freki. They are my loyal companions. They feast at my side. They guard me always. He spoke of his animal kin. He described their fierce loyalty. They were part of his essence. The guards stood straighter. Their faces showed wonder. Geirrodr remained silent. His expression was unreadable, but he was listening intently. He could not ignore these words. They held too much power. Gunnar felt a deep understanding. This was no ordinary man. This was a god in disguise. This was Odin himself. He had been so kind to him. He had shown him such compassion. A wave of awe washed over him. He felt honored by this revelation. He had shared his meager food. He had offered simple comfort, and in return, he received truth. He gained ancient knowledge. His world expanded immensely. The fires now flickered gently. Their angry roar had softened. They seemed to respond to the words. They bowed to their ancient power. The oppressive air had lifted. A sense of peace settled in. Grimnir spoke of creation. From Ginnungagap, the void. Life sprang forth then, from ice and from fire. The first beings came. He described the primordial chaos. He painted a picture of beginnings. The giants came first, he said. Then the gods were born. We shaped the world. We gave it order. We brought life to it. He narrated the dawn of time. He told of divine craftsmanship. The first man and woman, he recounted. From ash and from elm. I breathed life into them. I gave them consciousness. I gave them free will. He spoke of humanity's origins. He spoke of his own hand in it. Gunnar felt a connection to the vast cosmos, to the ancient gods, to the very beginning. His heart swelled with emotion. He felt part of something grand, something eternal and sacred. Grimnir's voice began to soften. The chanting slowed. The intensity lessened. He had shared his story. He had revealed his being. The Grimnismal was ending. Its powerful magic lingered. He looked at Gunnar directly. His one eye held ancient wisdom. It held deep appreciation. "You have shown me kindness," he said. His voice was no longer a chant. It was simply a god's voice. "You have a pure heart," he continued. "You deserve true knowledge. You deserve to know the truth." Gunnar felt a profound gratitude. He had been chosen. He had been deemed worthy. The silence that followed was deep. It was filled with meaning. The firelight cast long shadows. They danced on the walls. The air was cool and clear. The oppressive heat was gone. Grimnir closed his single eye. He seemed to rest now. His task was complete. His truth was revealed. He had fulfilled his purpose. He had repaid the kindness. He had offered the gift of lore. Gunnar continued to gaze. He saw beyond the rags. He saw past the grime. He saw the true essence. He saw the Allfather. He saw Odin, the High One. His heart was full. He looked at Geirrodr. The king's face was pale. His eyes were wide. He too had heard the words. He too had felt the power. The revelation had affected him. It had shaken his very core. The guards stood transfixed. They had witnessed a miracle. A god had spoken among them. A god had revealed himself. Their world had shifted. Their understanding had deepened. The fires now burned low. They cast a gentle glow. The ordeal was nearing its end. The truth had been spoken. The wisdom had been shared. The air was filled with peace. Gunnar felt a deep calm. He felt a sense of belonging. He understood his place in the grand tapestry of life, in the vastness of the cosmos. He was a small part, yet connected. He knew what he must do now. He knew how to proceed. His compassion would guide him. His understanding would lead him. He would honor this revelation. He would act with wisdom. The night deepened around them. The stars began to appear. They twinkled in the sky. They seemed to watch over them. They bore witness to the truth. They acknowledged the ancient words. Grimnir lay still. His breathing was soft. He seemed to be sleeping, or perhaps meditating. He had given much of himself. He had poured out his essence. He had emptied his ancient well. Gunnar remained beside him. He felt a protective urge. He would guard this sacred space. He would honor the god. He would remember these words. They would guide his path forward. The hall was quiet now. Only the soft crackle of fire. Only the gentle sounds of night. The world seemed to hold its breath. It listened to the lingering echoes of names and of lore. The revelation had been complete. The truth had been laid bare. Odin had spoken. and the world had listened. The atmosphere hummed with power, a quiet, profound power. Gunnar felt a new strength, a deep inner peace. He was no longer afraid. He was no longer uncertain. He understood the path. He understood his purpose. He would rise to the challenge. The night passed slowly. Each minute was precious. Each moment held meaning. It was a night of transformation, a night of profound change, a night to remember always. The firelight danced. It painted shifting patterns. It cast warmth around them. It was a gentle presence. It was no longer a threat. It was a comforting glow. Gunnar closed his eyes. He replayed the words. He heard the names again. He saw the realms in his mind. He felt the vastness of it all. He felt connected to everything. He drifted closer to sleep. His mind was calm. His heart was full. He had witnessed a miracle. He had received a gift. He was forever changed. He was truly blessed. The air smelled of wood smoke. It smelled of ancient magic. It smelled of deep truth. It was a comforting aroma. It lulled him into slumber, a peaceful, knowing slumber. He would wake with new understanding. He would face the dawn. He would know what to do. The path was now clear. The future was bright. He was ready for it. The last embers glowed. They pulsed with soft light. They cast a gentle warmth. They whispered ancient secrets. They sang a lullaby, a song of peace and knowledge. Gunnar slept soundly. His dreams were vivid. They were filled with wonder. They were filled with magic. They were filled with gods. He was truly at rest. The rhythmic chanting filled the stone hall. Grimnir's voice, steady and deep, wove through the smoky air. Each word hung, then dissolved into the heavy silence. Geirrodr shifted on his throne. A faint unease stirred within him. Geirrodr the jester wrung his hands. His bells jangled softly, a nervous sound. Agnar, the steward, gripped his staff tighter. His knuckles were white with strain. Both men eyed Grimnir with growing apprehension. From Virgilmere, the river of life flows, Grimnir intoned. It nourishes Yggdrasil, the world tree. Geirrodr scoffed quietly. More mad ramblings, he muttered. Yet the words resonated. They echoed with an ancient truth. He remembered stories from his youth. Tales of the cosmos, of gods and giants. His mother had sung them to him. He had dismissed them as childish fancies. Now they clawed at his memory. Grimnir spoke of Valhalla's halls. He described the feasting, the fallen heroes. He spoke of Odin, the Allfather, the one-eyed god, wise and fearsome. Geirrodr's brow furrowed. A tremor ran through him. Geirrodr whimpered, a small, choked sound. He clutched at his cap. Agnar's eyes darted nervously. He looked from Grimnir to Geirrodr. Fear tightened his features. The air grew heavy. A strange pressure built within the hall. It pressed upon Geirrodr's chest. The flickering torchlight seemed to dim. Shadows danced, longer and more menacing. Grimnir's voice rose slightly. Odin the Wanderer seeks knowledge. His gaze seemed to pierce through the gloom. It rested for a moment on Geirrodr. A cold dread seeped into Geirrodr's bones. He recalled the old man's arrival. The tattered cloak, the single eye, the wise, weary expression. He had seen it, then dismissed it. His arrogance had blinded him. He traveled the 9 worlds, Grimnir continued. He sought wisdom, even from Mimir's well. Geirrodr's breath hitched. Mimir's well, the source of all wisdom. Only Odin had dared to drink from it. A gnawing suspicion began to form. It coiled in Geirrodr's gut. He had mistreated a stranger. A common beggar, he had thought. Now, the truth began to dawn. Geirrodr let out a small shriek. He pointed a trembling finger. "Look, master," he cried. Agnar gasped. His eyes were wide with terror. The fires around Grimnir intensified. They flared with an unnatural brilliance. The flames licked higher. They cast dancing shadows on the walls. Yet, Grimnir remained untouched. He sat calmly amidst the inferno. His face was serene. His voice never wavered. The heat should have been unbearable. It should have consumed him, but it did not. Geirrodr's heart pounded. A cold sweat broke out on his brow. He had ordered this torture. He had commanded the fires. He had mocked the strange old man. Odin, the raven god, sees all, Grimnir's voice boomed. It reverberated through the hall. It seemed to shake the very stones. Geirrodr's blood ran cold. He had heard the tales. Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. They flew across the worlds. They brought him news of everything. No secret was hidden from him. A wave of nausea washed over Geirrodr. His vision blurred for a moment. The truth was undeniable. It struck him with the force of a hammer blow. He had imprisoned Odin. He had tortured the Allfather. The realization was a crushing weight. It pressed down on him. His breath came in ragged gasps. Panic clawed at his throat. "No," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. "It cannot be." But his mind screamed otherwise. Every detail, every word, every sign confirmed it. Geirrodr was openly weeping now. Tears streamed down his painted cheeks. Agnar stumbled backward. He bumped into a pillar. His face was ashen. Grimnir's gaze fixed on Geirrodr. It was ancient and knowing. It held no malice, only a profound, weary sadness. Geirrodr felt exposed, stripped bare. He saw his own arrogance reflected there, his cruelty, his blindness. He had sought to prove his power. He had chosen the wrong victim. A terrible, fatal error. "He is the giver of victory," Grimnir continued. His voice was steady. "He is the father of slain warriors." Geirrodr remembered his own aspirations, his desire for glory. He had always sought Odin's favor. He had prayed to him for triumph. He had offered sacrifices, all for naught. He had spat in the face of his god. A desperate urgency seized him. He had to undo this. He had to make amends. But how? What could he offer? What could he say? He lurched forward on his throne. "Stop," he cried. His voice cracked. It was a pathetic sound. It was lost in the echoing hall. Grimnir did not pause. He continued his recitation. He is the master of runes. His words were like a judgment. They sealed Geirrodr's fate. Geirrodr's mind raced. He had to show humility. He had to beg forgiveness. He had to release Odin immediately, before it was too late. He tried to stand. His legs trembled. They threatened to buckle beneath him. His hands fumbled at his belt. He needed to unlock the shackles. Agnar moved first. He rushed to Grimnir's side. He fumbled with the chains. His hands shook violently. He could barely grasp the iron links. Geirrodr joined him. He pulled at a chain with both hands. He whimpered with effort. Their fear was palpable. It permeated the air. Geirrodr watched them. A flicker of hope ignited within him. Perhaps he could still salvage this. Perhaps Odin would forgive him. But his inherent arrogance resurfaced. It was a stubborn, ingrained flaw. He had never truly bowed to anyone, not even to the gods. He reached for a goblet. His hand trembled so violently, the wine sloshed. He needed to offer a drink, a peace offering, a gesture of respect. He extended the goblet. His hand shook uncontrollably. The wine spilled over the rim. It stained his fine tunic, a pathetic offering. Grimnir's eyes met his. There was no acceptance there, no forgiveness, only a deep, ancient sorrow. It pierced Geirrodr to his core. The fires around Grimnir roared. They seemed to mock Geirrodr's feeble attempts. They danced with an ominous energy. They burned brighter, hotter. Geirrodr flinched back. The heat was immense. It pushed him away. It was a barrier, a wall of divine judgment. He could not approach. He was trapped by his own folly, trapped by his hubris. The very fires he had commanded now stood between him and salvation. He sank back onto his throne. Despair settled over him. A cold, heavy blanket. His attempts were futile. He was too late. Grimnir's voice filled the hall. His words were a final prophecy, a pronouncement of doom. Geirrodr listened, helpless. His fate was sealed. He had dared to harm the Allfather. He had insulted the King of Gods. There would be no escape, no forgiveness, only retribution. The hall seemed to shrink around him. The shadows deepened. The air grew heavy. The weight of his transgression was unbearable. He looked at Geirrodr and Agnar. Their faces were etched with terror. They knew. They understood the gravity of the situation. Their master was doomed. Grimnir continued to speak. Each word was a hammer blow. It struck at Geirrodr's heart. It shattered his fragile hope. The fires pulsed around Grimnir. They seemed to breathe with him. They flared, then dimmed, then flared again. They were an extension of his will. Geirrodr felt a chill. It was a coldness that seeped into his bones. It was the chill of fear, the chill of absolute terror. He had lived a life of power. He had commanded armies. He had ruled his kingdom. Now he was nothing, a mere mortal facing divine wrath. His arrogance had been his downfall. His pride had blinded him. He had mistaken a god for a beggar. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. He closed his eyes. The image of Grimnir, serene amidst the flames, was burned into his mind. It would haunt him forever. He heard the soft clink of chains. Agnar and Geirrodr had managed to free Grimnir, but it was too late. The damage was done. Grimnir's voice changed. It was no longer a chant. It was a declaration, a prophecy, a curse. Geirrodr trembled uncontrollably. The air crackled with energy. A strange light filled the hall. It pulsed with an ethereal glow. It was not of this world. Geirrodr opened his eyes. Grimnir stood. He was no longer bound. The chains lay discarded at his feet. They seemed to shimmer with residual power. He looked at Geirrodr. His one eye gleamed with ancient wisdom. It held the weight of ages. It held the sorrow of the world. Geirrodr felt a profound shame. He had brought this upon himself. He had invited this judgment. There was no one else to blame. The fires around Grimnir intensified one last time. They reached towards the ceiling. They illuminated the ancient hall. They cast long, dancing shadows. Then slowly, they began to recede. They sank back into the hearths. The air grew cooler. The strange light faded. Grimnir remained. He stood tall and unyielding. He was no longer the tattered beggar. He was a god, resplendent in his power. Geirrodr slumped further onto his throne. His strength had left him. He was utterly defeated. His kingdom, his life, all seemed meaningless. The quiet returned to the hall. It was a different quiet, a heavy quiet, a silence filled with unspoken dread. Geirrodr and Agnar stood frozen. Their faces were pale. They dared not move. They dared not speak. They waited for the inevitable. Grimnir took a step forward. His gaze never left Geirrodr. It was a gaze of profound disappointment, a gaze of ultimate judgment. Geirrodr felt a chill spread through his body. It was not the chill of the hall. It was the chill of destiny, the chill of death. He had defied a god. He had mocked the Allfather. There would be a price, a terrible price. He knew it in his heart. He looked at the discarded chains. They seemed to mock him. His arrogance had led him here, to this moment of reckoning. Grimnir raised his hand. It was a slow, deliberate movement. Geirrodr watched, mesmerized. He could do nothing. He was utterly helpless. And then the final verse began. Grimnir's voice deepened a resonant hum. It filled the very air, vibrating not just in their ears, but seeming to resonate within their very bones, a deep and ancient frequency. The last words echoed through the hall, not merely sounds, but tangible waves of power. They vibrated in every stone, making the very foundations of the king's grand, albeit now humble, feasting hall thrum in response. A sudden, blinding light erupted, not from a single source, but pulsing from Grimnir's very form, as if his being had become a supernova. The light was pure, incandescent, a brilliant golden white that seemed to hold both the searing heat of 1,000 suns and the cool, calming glow of the aurora borealis. It washed over everything, dispelling the lingering gloom that Geirrodr had so carefully cultivated within his fortress. The shadows, long and oppressive, fled, startled by this unbidden brilliance, recoiling into the deepest corners of the hall. Geirrodr gasped aloud, a thin, reedy sound swallowed by the sudden grandeur. His eyes widened in shock, reflecting the blinding light like twin mirrors. The hall was no longer dim, no longer a place of shadowed plots and cruel confinement. It glowed with an inner fire, a divine radiance that transformed the rough-hewn stone and simple tapestries into something sacred, something imbued with otherworldly majesty. The transformation was swift, almost too quick for the human eye to fully comprehend, yet it unfolded with an undeniable, awe-inspiring majesty. Grimnir's tattered cloak, once a symbol of his apparent destitution, shimmered with an internal light, dissolving into countless golden threads that danced like motes of dust in a sunbeam before vanishing completely. His weathered face, etched with the lines of countless journeys and hardships, changed, the deep furrows smoothed away like magic, as if an unseen hand had gently brushed away the years of toil and sorrow. His beard, once long and gray, a tangled mass of wisdom and wanderlust, shortened, becoming a neatly trimmed, magnificent silver sheen that caught the light, gleaming like spun moonlight. His single eye, previously veiled by a drooping eyelid and an air of quiet contemplation, blazed with an intensity that could pierce through time itself. It held the wisdom of ages, the vast knowledge of millennia, and the unyielding resolve of a cosmic deity. This was no mere wanderer, no simple stranger seeking shelter. This was something more, something infinitely grander. This was something divine, something that resonated with the ancient tales whispered around hearths on long winter nights. The very air crackled, not with static electricity, but with a vibrant, tangible energy that hummed with immense power, filling every cubic inch of the space. It felt like the air itself was alive, charged with an unseen force. The hearth fires, which had been merely embers moments before, roared higher, their flames leaping with renewed vigor, as if acknowledging the presence of a greater fire. They cast flickering patterns of light and shadow across the hall, no longer ordinary dancing light, but pulsating with divine power, their tongues of flame seeming to reach for the high, vaulted ceiling, eager to touch the heavens. The heat intensified pleasantly, a comforting warmth that banished the chill from the stone walls and seeped into the bones of all present. Yet, it was not overwhelming, not stifling. It was a warmth that held immense might, a gentle embrace that hinted at unimaginable power held in careful restraint. The scent of wood smoke mingled with something else now, something pure and clean, like ozone after a powerful storm, or the crisp, invigorating air of a mountaintop. Then the blinding light began to coalesce, drawing inward, gathering around Grimnir like a swirling vortex of pure energy. He grew taller, more imposing with each passing second, his frame expanding, filling the space with an almost impossible presence. His very being seemed to press down on all present, a crushing weight of divine authority that stole the air from their lungs. Geirrodr, already trembling, stumbled backward, his feet tangling beneath him. He clutched at his throat, a desperate, animalistic gesture as his breath hitched there, refusing to come. His face paled dramatically, losing all color, becoming a mask of ashen terror. Fear, cold and ancient, etched itself upon his features, seizing him completely, paralyzing him in its icy grip. It was the primal dread of a mortal facing an unleashed god. Grimnir stood revealed, no longer the disguised wanderer, but Odin Allfather, the lord of Asgard, the weaver of fates, the god of wisdom, war, and poetry. His single, blazing eye swept the hall, its gaze encompassing every quivering courtier, every terrified guard. It rested briefly, but with devastating intensity, on Geirrodr. The king visibly trembled, a pathetic, almost comical sight in his once proud robes. He cowered before that unblinking stare, shrinking into himself as if trying to disappear. Odin's voice boomed forth then, not a shout of anger, but a deep, resonant tone that vibrated in their bones, a sound that seemed to originate from the very core of the cosmos. The words were clear, undeniable, imbued with an absolute truth that left no room for doubt or argument. "You, Geirrodr," Odin began, his voice calm, yet holding immense power, a quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. "You have failed in hospitality." The accusation hung heavy, thick, and suffocating, settling in the air like a pall. It was not merely a statement, but a judgment delivered from on high. "You have shown arrogance," Odin continued, his voice steady, unwavering, each word a hammer blow against Geirrodr's fragile composure. "You have shown cruelty." Each pronouncement struck like a physical blow, pounding into Geirrodr's soul, stripping away his defenses. "You bound a guest," Odin's voice hardened slightly, the calm giving way to a chilling edge of righteous indignation. "You tortured a stranger." He listed each transgression with meticulous precision, each one a stone carefully placed, building an insurmountable cairn of guilt and condemnation that weighed heavily on the king, pressing him down. Geirrodr's mind raced, a frantic, desperate scramble for an excuse, a plea, anything. It spun in frantic circles, a whirlwind of terror and dawning realization. He remembered with horrifying clarity the torment he had inflicted, the gnawing hunger Grimnir must have endured, the searing pain of the fires he had stoked beneath the venerable wanderer. He had thought Grimnir weak, a helpless old man easily bent to his will, a plaything for his cruel amusement. He had been so terribly, utterly wrong. The realization crashed over him, a tidal wave of pure terror that threatened to drown him. His breath came in ragged, desperate gasps, and he looked around wildly, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for an escape, a hidden door, anything to flee this terrifying judgment. There was none. The hall was sealed by divine presence. Odin's gaze remained fixed, unwavering, piercing through Geirrodr, as if his very soul were laid bare. Your actions are unforgivable. The words were a final pronouncement, a definitive judgment from which there was no appeal, no mercy to be found. Geirrodr's knees buckled, threatening to give way entirely. He struggled to remain upright, his legs feeling like jelly, devoid of strength. A cold sweat broke out on his brow, beading on his forehead and trickling down his temples. His heart hammered in his chest, a frantic, desperate rhythm against his ribs, like a trapped bird beating its wings against a cage. A desperate plea formed, a choked sound in his throat, but no words emerged. He wanted to beg, to grovel, to offer anything for a reprieve. Perhaps Odin would relent. Perhaps there was still a sliver of hope. He lunged forward suddenly, a desperate, panicked impulse born of sheer terror. Was it to beg forgiveness? Or was it an attack, a last, futile act of defiance? His mind was a blur, a maelstrom of fear and confusion. He moved without conscious thought, propelled by instinct alone, a cornered animal making a last stand. His heavy sword hung there, a forgotten weight dangling at his side. He had forgotten it in his terror, the very weapon he had worn so proudly, the symbol of his power. Now it was a burden, a dangerous encumbrance. As he lunged forward, desperate and clumsy, his foot caught. It snagged on the hilt of his own sword, which swung outward, tripping him completely. He stumbled awkwardly, his balance utterly lost. He pitched forward helplessly, a puppet with severed strings. It happened very fast, a horrifyingly swift sequence of events. The sharp point of his sword gleamed, catching the divine light, pointing upward menacingly. It was his own blade, the blade he had drawn to threaten Grimnir, the blade that had been a tool of his cruelty. He fell directly upon it, a sickening inevitability. The impact was a dull thud, a sound that seemed strangely muted in the supernaturally charged air. It was followed by a gasp, a short, sharp exhalation that was Geirrodr's last breath. The steel plunged deep, finding its mark with brutal precision, piercing his very heart. His body went rigid, a violent tremor passing through it as if in a final, agonizing spasm. Then, with a sudden, dreadful finality, he went limp. He lay motionless on the floor, a crumpled heap of royal robes and failed ambition. His eyes stared blankly upward, wide with the terror of his last moments, reflecting the fading divine light. His mouth was slightly agape, a silent scream frozen there, a testament to his final, unutterable horror. A thin trickle of blood, dark and stark against the pale stone, seeped from beneath him, spreading slowly, darkly, a growing stain. The hall was plunged into a profound silence, a sudden, heavy quiet that seemed to absorb all sound. It was a stunned silence, a collective holding of breath. No one spoke a word, no one dared to move, frozen in place like statues carved from fear. The court attendants, the guards, the remaining courtiers All watched, their faces ashen, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and profound terror. The air thickened around them, not with power now, but with the lingering presence of divine judgment, vibrating with the aftershocks of immense power. Odin stood perfectly still, his presence still immense, filling every corner of the hall, a silent, unmoving sentinel of cosmic justice. The divine light softened, dimming ever so slightly, transitioning from blinding brilliance to a gentle, ethereal glow. Odin's form became less vivid, his outlines growing ethereal, shimmering like a mirage. The roaring fires calmed, their wild dance ceasing, though they still burned brightly, their flames now steady and controlled. The intense energy that had filled the hall lessened, receding slowly, flowing back to its source, like a tide returning to the sea. The air felt lighter, the oppressive pressure easing, allowing them to breathe again. Though their breaths were shallow and ragged, Odin's gaze lingered, surveying the scene with an ancient, knowing wisdom. It rested on Geirrodr's body, a quiet acknowledgement of the outcome. There was no triumph there, no satisfaction in the king's demise, for a god does not revel in such fleeting mortal emotions. There was only a calm acceptance, the inevitable consequence of a mortal's choices. It was the acceptance of fate, the natural outcome of deeds sown. He had delivered his judgment. The scales were balanced, and justice had been served swiftly and irrevocably. Then, with a gentle sigh that seemed to carry the weight of ages, Odin began to fade. His form became translucent, shimmering like heat haze on a summer day, his outlines blurring, becoming indistinct. The light around him dimmed further, pulling inward slowly, as if being reabsorbed into the fabric of the cosmos. His powerful presence lessened, becoming less tangible, less immediate, though the awe in the hall remained, a deep imprint on their very souls. The fear was still there, a lingering chill, but the immediate, heart-stopping threat had passed. The court remained frozen, transfixed, watching him disappear. It was like a dream, a vivid, terrifying vision that defied rational explanation. One moment, he was undeniably there, a towering embodiment of divine power. The next, he was gone, vanished as if he had never been. Only the lingering warmth remained, a faint echo of the divine fire. Only the faint scent of power, like distant thunder on the wind. Only the profound silence. Only the body of their king, lying still and lifeless on the stone floor. A stark reminder of the terrifying reality they had just witnessed. A ripple went through the crowd, a collective shiver that seemed to pass from one terrified soul to another. They looked at each other, their eyes wide and questioning, filled with disbelief and profound terror. What had just happened? Had they truly seen it? Had Odin truly been here, walking among them, a guest in their very hall? The evidence lay before them, undeniable and gruesome. The dead king was proof, a silent, bleeding testament to the Allfather's wrath. The silence stretched on, heavy and oppressive, a suffocating blanket woven from fear and shock. No one dared to break it, no one dared to speak, for fear of drawing further divine attention. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, a tiny, mundane sound in the overwhelming quiet. It cast long, dancing shadows that played across the walls, making the scene eerily real, a macabre tableau. It was not a dream, no fleeting nightmare. It was a terrifying, undeniable reality. The air still hummed faintly, a residual energy lingering, a whisper of power, a memory of might. The court attendants felt it, a tingling sensation on their skin that raised goosebumps on their arms. They shifted nervously, their eyes darting around, searching for something, anything, to reassure them that this was merely a figment of their shattered minds. There was none to be found. Geirrodr's body lay still, a grim tableau of consequence. His crown, once a symbol of his authority, had fallen off in his death throes, rolling a short distance across the stone floor. It glinted dully in the firelight, a pathetic, discarded bauble. His royal robes were rumpled and stained with blood, no longer majestic, but merely a shroud. He looked small now, insignificant, stripped of all his power and arrogance. The king was no more. His own hubris, his cruelty, had consumed him entirely. The full weight of the event settled upon the court, a crushing burden of understanding. Their king was dead, slain by his own hand, by his own sword, a victim of his own folly. It was a divine judgment, a terrifying lesson etched into their very beings. They would never forget this night. It would be etched in their minds, a searing brand. It would haunt their dreams, a constant reminder of the thin veil between the mortal and the divine. The hall felt vast now, empty and cold, despite the still burning fire. The warmth of Odin's presence had receded. The divine glow was gone, leaving only the ordinary fire and the ordinary shadows. But the memory was vivid, the presence of Odin undeniable, overwhelming, a force of nature that had reshaped their world in mere moments. A quiet murmur began, starting among the guards, a low, hushed sound that spread slowly through the court, like a ripple in a still pond. It was a sound filled with awe, with fear, with a newfound reverence. They spoke of the Allfather, of his immense power, of his unyielding justice. They spoke of Geirrodr, of his foolishness, his fatal arrogance. The story would spread, carried on the winds, traveling far and wide across the lands. It would be whispered in halls, a cautionary tale. It would be sung by skalds, a somber epic. It would be a warning, a tale of hubris, a tale of divine wrath, a tale of Odin's undeniable might, and of the terrible price of cruelty. The night had changed everything for them. It had reshaped their world, their understanding of power, and their place within the cosmic order. The air grew chillier. The fire seemed less bright, its warmth no longer infused with divine energy. The magic had departed. The divinity had receded. Only the physical remained, only the stark consequences. Geirrodr's reign was over. It ended in fear, in blood, in swift, absolute judgment. The royal chambers were empty, waiting for a king. But there was no king, only a dead man, a fallen ruler. The throne stood vacant, awaiting a new occupant, one who would remember this night, one who would learn from Geirrodr's tragic fate, one who would forever fear the consequences of dishonoring a guest, especially a guest who might be the Allfather himself. The silence returned, a heavy shroud that settled upon the hall, upon the court. They stood in stunned awe, in trembling fear, their faces pale in the firelight. The night was still young, but it had aged them all, imprinted upon them a truth that would forever alter their lives. The gods were real. Their judgment was absolute. They were not to be trifled with, not ever. The great hall hushed, its usual boisterous echoes swallowed by a profound stillness that settled like a thick velvet cloak. Torches, usually blazing with a fierce, crackling energy, seemed to dim, their flames dancing with a newfound reverence, casting long, wavering shadows that stretched like silent specters across the polished stone floor. The air, typically thick with the scent of roasted meat and ale, now carried a faint, almost ethereal fragrance, like ozone after a distant storm, or the subtle perfume of ancient magic. Odin, the Allfather, stood tall, his presence a palpable force that filled every corner of the vast chamber. His single, piercing eye, usually a beacon of unyielding authority, softened, the wisdom of ages swirling within its depths. It rested upon young Gunnar, who, despite the recent ordeal, still trembled slightly, a faint tremor that ran through his slender frame. He met Odin's gaze, not with defiance, but with an open vulnerability, and saw there no anger, no judgment, only a deep, abiding understanding. A quiet recognition, ancient and profound, passed between them, a silent, powerful acknowledgement that transcended words. Gunnar's heart, which had moments before hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, now beat a gentle, steady rhythm, a soft thrumming that resonated through his very bones. He felt a warmth, not from the nearby hearths, but from within, a comforting, steady heat that began to spread through his limbs, dispelling the lingering tendrils of fear that had coiled around him. This was no longer a judge, a terrifying deity of war and wisdom. This was a mentor, a guiding hand appearing from the mists of legend. Odin took a single, deliberate step, the sound of his boot on the stone floor barely a whisper, swallowed by the profound quiet. His cloak, woven from the deepest shadows of the cosmos, and the shimmering dust of distant starlight, barely stirred, yet the air around him shimmered faintly, as if the very space bent and rippled to accommodate his divine presence. The ancient runes carved into the hall's supporting pillars seemed to glow with a faint, internal light, humming with an unheard energy. He reached out a hand, not in a gesture of command or a demand for obeisance, but a gesture of quiet blessing, a gentle benediction. His fingers, gnarled with the untold ages of existence, and etched with the wisdom of countless sagas, gently touched Gunnar's brow. A faint, golden light, almost imperceptible to the eye, emanated from his touch, a soft, warm glow that seemed to seep into Gunnar's skin. But Gunnar felt it deeply, a prickling sensation that traveled down his spine, a transfer of grace, a silent empowerment that invigorated his spirit, and quieted his soul. Young one, Odin's voice resonated, a low, melodic hum that filled the vast hall, vibrating in the very stones and in the chests of all who stood witness. It was a voice that carried the weight of creation and the murmur of forgotten tales. You possess a true heart. Each word was carefully measured, each syllable carrying immense weight, a truth etched into the very fabric of existence. You showed kindness where others showed scorn, a rare and precious gem in these harsh lands. His eye, usually so stern, held a gentle intensity, seeming to peer into Gunnar's very soul, uncovering the purest intentions hidden within. You offered solace when a stranger needed it most, a balm to a wounded spirit. The boy listened, mesmerized, his own breath held captive in his throat. He felt a profound sense of humility, a recognition of his own smallness in the face of such greatness. Yet paradoxically, a surge of quiet pride, a warmth blooming in his chest at the Allfather's words. This hall has known darkness, Odin continued, his gaze sweeping across the great space, lingering for a fleeting moment on the empty, ornate throne that had once belonged to the tyrannical Geirrodr. It has known arrogance and greed, ambition that devoured compassion. A faint shadow, like the fleeting passage of a raven's wing, crossed his features, a momentary ripple of ancient sorrow. But it was quickly gone, replaced by a resolute light. But it shall know light once more, a dawn born of generosity and understanding. His voice gained a quiet strength, a resonant certainty that was a promise whispered on the wind, echoing through the rafters. It shall know compassion and wisdom, a reign guided by empathy. The assembled courtiers, who had been frozen in awe, hung on his every word, their faces a mixture of wonder and dawning comprehension. They understood the immense gravity of this moment, the shifting of the cosmic scales. Odin's gaze returned to Gunnar, and a faint, approving smile, a truly rare sight on the grim countenance of the Allfather, touched his lips. "You shall rule this land," he declared, the words not a question or a suggestion, but a decree, an unalterable pronouncement from the highest authority. "You shall guide its people with a hand both firm and gentle, a fist of iron cloaked in the softest velvet." He paused, allowing the weight of the words to settle, to sink into the very air of the hall. The hall remained utterly silent, so quiet that one could almost hear the dust motes dancing in the faint light. No one dared to breathe, absorbing the divine pronouncement, the undeniable will of the gods. Gunnar, feeling the immense weight of the responsibility settle upon his young shoulders, stood straighter, his posture transforming, imbued with a newfound sense of purpose that coursed through his veins like a powerful river. "Remember this day," Odin instructed, his voice a soft admonition, a gentle reminder that would echo through the boy's life. "Remember the lessons learned, for they are the keys to a prosperous reign." He gestured subtly around the hall, his hand encompassing not just the stone and wood, but the very spirit of the place. Hospitality is a sacred bond, a shield against the coldness of the world, a bridge between strangers. His gaze met the eyes of the courtiers, moving from face to face, and they nodded slowly, understanding dawning in their expressions, a shared recognition of this ancient law. Humility is strength, not weakness, for it allows one to learn and to grow, to see beyond one's own limited view. He spoke with deep conviction, his voice resonating with the truth of countless ages. And wisdom, true wisdom, comes from within, from the quiet voice of conscience and the open heart. It was a profound teaching, a gift of immeasurable value, more precious than any hoard of gold, a faint shimmer, like the heat haze rising from a sun-baked road, began to surround Odin. It started at his feet, a subtle distortion of the air, and slowly ascended, enveloping his form. The air around him grew translucent, as if the very fabric of reality was thinning. The colors of the hall seemed to deepen, becoming richer, more vibrant, as if seen through a prism of pure magic. The shadows lengthened and softened, losing their stark edges, becoming part of the encroaching aura. He was becoming less distinct, his form beginning to blur, to dissolve into pure light and shimmering air. Yet, his single eye remained clear, intensely focused on Gunnar, holding a silent benediction, a final blessing that transcended his fading form. "The gods watch," Odin murmured, his voice growing fainter, like a distant echo carried on the wind, already receding into the vastness of the cosmos. Always watching, always guiding the threads of fate. His form was now almost entirely veiled, a shimmering mirage, an ephemeral vision of divine power. True power, his voice whispered now, barely audible, a breath of air, lies in a generous heart. With those final words, a soft, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in the very air, he was gone, vanishing as swiftly and completely as a dream upon waking. There was no sound, no trace, no ripple in the air, only a lingering essence, a sense of profound peace, and an undeniable spiritual residue that permeated the hall. Silence stretched for a long, immeasurable moment, a heavy, pregnant silence that pressed down on the assembled courtiers. Then, a collective breath was exhaled, a soft, ragged sound, like the release of a long-held tension. The courtiers looked at each other, their faces a mixture of awe and bewilderment, wonder and dawning comprehension. They had witnessed a miracle, a direct intervention of the divine. They had seen a god, heard his pronouncements, and witnessed the true heir chosen by the Allfather himself. Gunnar stood alone now, in the very center of the vast hall, bathed in the lingering golden light that still seemed to cling to him, a subtle aura of divine blessing. He felt strangely calm, a deep wellspring of inner strength having replaced the fear and uncertainty. The immense weight of his new destiny settled upon him, not as a crushing burden, but as a noble calling, a purpose gifted by the gods. He looked at the empty throne, no longer a symbol of tyranny or a foreboding seat of power, but an invitation, a solemn promise of a new beginning, a beacon for a brighter future. An elder courtier, Geirrodr, a man of great age whose long white beard flowed like a winter waterfall, stepped forward. He had served under many rulers, seen kingdoms rise and fall, and his eyes, usually clouded with the weariness of years, now shone with a clear, almost youthful light. He bowed deeply before Gunnar, his old bones creaking, but his movements imbued with a profound respect. His actions spoke volumes, an acknowledgement of divine will, an acceptance of the new order. "My Lord Gunnar," he said, his voice thick with emotion, a tremor of awe and relief. "The hall is yours. The kingdom awaits your reign." His eyes, filled with tears of respect, met Gunnar's, silently conveying the hopes of a weary people. Other courtiers, spurred by Hreidmar's example and the undeniable power of Odin's decree, followed suit. They knelt before Gunnar, their heads bowed in deference, their loyalty now unquestioning, their faces etched with a profound sense of awe. They had seen the divine hand at work, the true king revealed by the Allfather himself. Gunnar looked at them, taking in their sincerity, their hope, their quiet desperation for a just ruler. He knew then, with absolute certainty, that he could not fail them. He would rule with kindness, with justice, and with the unwavering wisdom gleaned from Odin's words. He walked slowly towards the throne, each step deliberate, each movement a commitment to his new path. The polished stone floor felt cool beneath his boots, a grounding sensation. He ascended the few steps, the ancient wood beneath his feet feeling solid, steadfast. He turned to face his people, his gaze sweeping across their upturned faces, and took a deep, steadying breath, filling his lungs with the air of his new reign. He sat upon the throne, and to his surprise, it was not cold or imposing, but strangely comfortable, as if it had been waiting for him. It felt right, a natural fit. He felt its power, a deep resonance of authority, but he also felt its immense responsibility, a weight that settled gently upon his shoulders. Gunnar's eyes swept across the hall once more, seeing the faces of his people, their trust, their expectation, their flickering hope. He knew instinctively that his reign would be different, a stark contrast to the tyranny that had preceded him. It would be a reign of openness, of compassion, of genuine concern for his subjects. He would foster hospitality, ensuring that all who entered his halls found warmth and welcome. He would champion humility, remembering that true strength lay not in arrogance, but in understanding and self-awareness. He would seek wisdom in all things, listening to his advisors, to his people, and to the quiet voice within. The arrogance that had plagued Geirrodr, the cruelty that had festered in the kingdom, would be banished, replaced by a reign of kindness and justice. A quiet murmur spread through the hall, a sound of approval, a collective sigh of relief that rippled through the assembled crowd. Hope flickered in many eyes, rekindled after long years of despair. A new era had begun, marked by divine decree. The long shadow of Geirrodr's tyranny lifted, dissolving like mist in the morning sun, and the promise of a brighter future emerged, clear and vibrant. The land would prosper, the people would thrive, all under a ruler who understood the true meaning of power, a ruler with a generous heart. Far above, in Asgard, Odin returned, the Bifrost shimmering behind him, its vibrant colors fading slowly into the cosmic dust. He walked through the golden halls, his footsteps silent on the polished floors, his expression thoughtful, a subtle satisfaction playing on his features. He had delivered his lesson, restored the balance that had been disturbed. The scales of justice had tipped, not with a crash, but with a gentle, decisive movement, settling firmly on kindness and compassion. He thought of Gunnar, of the young boy's quiet compassion, his unassuming courage, his inherent goodness. Yes, the land would prosper. It would flourish under such a heart. The lesson had been learned not through thunder and lightning, but through quiet observation and a gentle, profound intervention. Arrogance had met its downfall, and kindness had found its rightful reward. The intricate threads of fate, woven by the Norns, had been rewoven, not broken, but strengthened and made brighter by this new pattern. Odin reached his throne, the Aechlidskjalf, and sat down slowly, his gaze drifting downwards, piercing through the layers of the cosmos. He looked out over the realms, seeing Midgard, green and vibrant, teeming with life. He saw the hall of Gunnar, glowing with a new, gentle light, a beacon of hope shining within the mortal realm. The gods were indeed watching, always watching. And sometimes, when the imbalance grew too great, they intervened, not with destructive force, but with quiet blessings, with profound lessons, with the gentle, guiding touch of fate. The stars outside Asgard's towering windows twinkled with an ancient light, seeming to hum a soft lullaby, a lullaby of peace, a lullaby of justice, a song of cosmic harmony. The universe settled into a rhythm of rightness, of balance restored. And in the heart of a young king, a new song began, a song of kindness, a song of wisdom, a song that would echo through the ages, carried on the winds of change. A reign of true power, a reign of a generous heart. The land would heal, the people would rejoice, and the gods would smile upon it all. For a new dawn had truly broken over Midgard. If these whispers brought you rest, you're welcome to subscribe for more calm tales. A gentle, like also guides fellow night owls here.